You think you're doing things fast. You think you've like tapped out your speed on Pro Tools, but it's like there's so many more opportunities.
Can your brain even like go that fast, or has it just gone down to like muscle memory?
I'm gonna spend so much time customizing my contextual toolbar.
Yeah, that was a lot to take in.
I think you have a really good thing going on here. First of all, I'm gonna do a short introduction of myself. So I'm Nikola Lukic. I'm a technical sound designer, as you already know. I'm originally from Serbia. Currently, I'm based in France. Working for Ubisoft, and in my free time, I'm developing Reaper scripts and tips and tutorials to improve workflow, mostly for game audio, but it can be, I guess, used for other things as well. I have I don't know, 7 years, almost 8 years of experience in the industry, and we'll see. I hope it will be at least as much as that in future. There's a lot of people from different backgrounds, from different preferences and experience, so I wasn't expecting such a diverse and big audience, so that's kind of cool. Yeah, so one next question for me is, how many of you are actually using Reaper? I think it's the most of you, if I understand correctly. Yeah, okay. And the other, so for those who are not using Reaper, which DAWs are you using? I'm interested to know.
I've been using Pro Tools for about 10 years now. I've just started to get into sound design, but at my day job we do a lot of podcasts and things like that, so dialogue editing mostly.
I'm using Ableton Live for pure sound design and processing things, and I use Pro Tools for recording, editing.
And then I'm using Cubase mostly. I have used Reaper for like making loops and like seamless loops.
And I'm using Cubase only too.
Okay, so how do you want to do this? You want to ask questions? So where do we start?
So I think one of the questions that we have talked about in the beginning before you came, because we had a 1 hour long pre-show already, is the technical sound design. Just learn a little bit about your background, because as you have seen, there are many people who are kind of juniors trying to break into the industry. So I think this kind of, how did you get to the position you are and what do you do there would be very, very interesting.
Unfortunately, technical sound design is a term that is being used in different companies for different things. And I'm starting to realize that more and more. And so it's not the same, and there's no exact definition. It really depends on how the company is having a perspective on sound as a field of game audio or game production. In my background is I actually finished a film school in Belgrade, so it's a classical film school to become a sound designer and sound recordist for films. And there is also theater and radio and what's the fourth thing? TV, yeah. TV, film, radio, and theater. So you're basically learning how to do production of movies, production of TV shows, production of theater shows and stuff like that. So because I was always interested in movies, and I was interested in sound and music, and somehow I found that being synergized together, and I finished that school. But after that, I started working as a gameplay programmer. So completely jump to a different field. So there, in some circumstances, I had made a simple indie game with my brother, a small demo prototype, because I was also all the time interested in gaming and in games as well. So he's an artist, I was a sound designer, and then I used GameMaker, if you're familiar with the engine. It's a really cool and more and more popular engine for 2D games. And it's really a good basics overall of game production. So I learned to use GameMaker at version 6 or something like that. Before it was GameMaker Studio. And with that game, we showcased something on the, let's say, indie games of Serbia developer show, something like that. And I met some people who are from the company called Madhead Games. They expressed their interest in myself and my brother. So we met, and I said, okay, I can do sound design, I can do music for your games, whatever you want. I'm finishing school, so if you need sound designers, I'm available, because I want to switch from movies maybe to games. And they said, okay, but we need a programmer. And I was like, okay, but I'm not a programmer. I'm enthusiast. Like I know just the basics. And they were like, well, let's do the test and then we'll see. So I did some tests. They sent me a test. I made a small like Tetris game, and they were like, okay, you're hired. When can you start working? And then I started working on a game, adventure game. I was the only programmer on the project, with a couple of artists, technical artists, and other folks that were supportive roles. It was a small team, let's say 10 people max, making a game in production cycle that was like maybe 1 year, something like that. And they had a really specialized custom engine with custom scripting language, which I had to learn when I was there. But the good thing is that there was nothing expected from me to already know, because it's a custom technology. So I had help from other programmers who were experienced in that field in the company. And I finished one complete game. And after that, I quit. So at the same time, like when I finished that game, there was an opportunity inside the company. They wanted another sound designer, because there was one at the time. And then when I finished that game and I wanted to stop working on programming, there was a good opportunity for me there. So I stayed in company, but I just switched the position. And from that moment, I started working as a sound designer who finished film school and who did 1 year of gameplay programming inside the company. And so that gave me a unique perspective, where I knew the engine very well. I knew how to do gameplay stuff. I knew how to implement art assets, to do localization text, and also I knew how to implement sounds as well. And so I knew the whole cycle of production and how it is done. And I was involved in fields like narrative design and game design and interactions and stuff like that. So I had a wider perspective than my colleague sound designer. And that was very useful because there were issues, of course, with the tools, with the production, with the processes. So I was able to see the whole picture and to design some small tools to improve the workflow of the implementation. Because at the time, company was growing really fast. So 1 year they did one game, next year they did 2 projects at the same time, and then next year they did like 8 projects, and then it was really scaling quickly. So there was really a big need for efficient and streamlined production, and also like for the audio implementation and the whole process, we needed to decide how can we be completely fast, like the fastest we can be, but still deliver the quality that's needed. And so those were very specific kind of games, like they're called HOPA games. You can look them up. It's a custom hidden object puzzle adventure games. So they are made for a very specific audience targeted toward middle-aged American women. And there's yeah, it seems a bit funny, but it's a really well-researched market. And Big Fish is the publisher and the developer who is doing this kind of games for like a couple of decades already. And they're also doing some casino games, so it's related to that. But this was really like adventure games with some hidden object puzzles. And so there's narrative, there's a main character, there's storyline, you have interactions, you have magic, you have mystery, you have a lot of things, and you need to do specific kind of art and aesthetic approach. So it's like they have like a document of 300 pages on how to and how not to do these games. So let's, for example, don't put snakes. Our target audience doesn't like snakes or spiders. Don't do some kiddie, childish stuff. Don't do too realistic graphics. It needs to be like a fantasy, but like something like Agatha Christie stuff, detective noir and stuff like that, but not too unrealistic. So you need to keep a balance, and you need to make these games quickly. And I developed a small like mixer, let's say, inside in-game mixers to mix the sound, because before that you open the game, you play through a scene, and then you see the one sound is too loud or too quiet, and then you close the game, you open some text file, you change the value, and then you run the game again, go to that point of your gameplay, or load the checkpoint if you saved it, and then play again. And so it was really a cumbersome process of simple like level mixing, or enabling loops and disabling loops and stuff like that. And there were other complicated things for implementation of audio there. Like with these puzzles, you always have some sliders and cogs and knobs, something that you need to move that has some mechanical properties that need to have a sound. And so for these things, you need to do a custom implementation of audio. So I was officially just a sound designer, but because I was able to develop these implementation systems and develop some kind of special in-game custom tools, I was already in a way a technical sound designer, because I was not just making sounds, I was sculpting the process of implementation and creating better systems which allow you to have more realistic and more believable sound experience, which then brings up your whole level of quality for the whole game. And I was that was appreciated in my team and in the company. And the company grew, and then ambitions also grew. So they wanted to start something else and to do something maybe for the different audience. Like, let's make some Unreal game, which is like a Diablo clone or stuff like that, mix of Diablo and League of Legends and stuff like that. So we started using and learning Unreal Engine, the whole company. And because we were unexperienced at the time, we bought a book. And the book was called Game Audio Implementation. And I recommend that book today. It's a really comprehensive analysis of how audio inside Unreal Engine works. And it's a really good example of how to solve specific issues of game audio implementation. And the thing is that you get your hands dirty. So you need to become familiar with the engine. You need to become familiar with what you can do with audio inside the engine. So you then learn your tools, and then once you learn them, and they're not just like creating sound assets inside your DAW, you have a better understanding of how game engine is working. You can then get new ideas. And I still haven't found a book or like a course that is so inspiring in that way. And in that book, they mentioned something weird. So because I'm from film school, we use Pro Tools as a film industry standard. Like that was the software we used. I was familiar with Nuendo as well for some music stuff, and Cubase, similar. But Pro Tools was our go-to DAW. And then I also started developing some scripts for Pro Tools during that time, because we had a need to make a lot of sounds quickly. And it's not really possible in Pro Tools. So if there are any users of Pro Tools here, or ex-users, you know that there's a feature called clip groups there, and it's a feature where you mark a couple of sounds, and then you create a block that is a container for these sounds. So that was the original core idea for render blocks later, because it was a feature inside Pro Tools. So I used the tool called AutoHotkey, and it's a scripting language which is free to download and use, and has some very powerful features to control your system, to create macros, to run some scripts in the background, to copy files from one place to another, and to also like define mouse and keyboard actions, complex mouse and keyboard actions. So for example, this to export this clip group from Pro Tools, you had to make a selection, press the shortcut to create the clip group, double click to open the renaming window, enter the name, press enter, go to file, go to bounce, then enter the name, the location, and then press render or bounce to disk, whatever. So this is a long list of actions, and it's possible to do automation of most of them. So I created a small script for Pro Tools to export these sounds quicker. And then the weird part in this book that I mentioned, they were not using Pro Tools, and they were not using Nuendo. They mentioned Reaper, and like I was, what? Why Reaper? What's the thing with this program? And they mentioned that they are using Reaper because it's cheap and it's customizable and it's very powerful and very good for game audio. And I remember I tried Reaper once during my faculty, during the university. Someone mentioned it and said, this is a cool, powerful program. And I remember downloading it and seeing how ugly it is and how cheap it looks and how unintuitive it is. Like I just closed it and never opened it again. Like, no. And and then this book really confused me because I was really amazed by all the examples and all the features that they presented in the book. So that got me curious. It started boiling in the head. So I downloaded that program to try it again. And it changed over the time. It was now version 5. When I tried it first, it was like version 3, I think. I was, again, completely confused, completely overwhelmed by the bunch of options and stuff like that I didn't understand. And then I closed it again. And I bought some video course which is a tutorial explanation from the basics of Reaper. And when I finished that, then everything changed. Then I understood, okay, you have one universal track type, you have custom scripts, you have custom actions, you have amazing customization abilities, you have a very good search engine for sound effects that is included in there. You have good video support. You have stable software, which is not crashing all the time. It has a small memory footprint. It's easy to download, install, and it's also cheap. Like it's the most affordable DAW that there is from the premium DAWs. You know, I'm not talking about open source and stuff like Audacity. So when I realized that, I started telling to my colleagues. At that moment, it was already like 3 or 4 of us in the audio team, and everyone was really suspicious and not trusting my my newly, let's say, revealed knowledge. And but they tried it, and like in a couple of months we ditched Pro Tools completely, and we started using this program to do sound effects for our games. And then I realized that there is included scripting language that I could learn and do something that I couldn't do in Pro Tools with these clip groups, but could possibly do it here. And the first script I made was the script to, when you click an item, to move edit cursor to the start of the item. And when I realized that it works, yeah, that was the really like nerdy moment for me. I was like, oh my God, I did something. It's so cool. Yeah. And from that moment, I started working on a lot of scripts for Reaper. And so some of them are you familiar, but the big projects are like Render Blocks and Content Navigator and Variator. And there's a lot of small other scripts. And during my time in Madhead Games, we switched to Wise and started using Unreal Engine. And then I realized that, again, my ability of being able to do some gameplay programming allowed me to do also these complex systems inside Unreal Engine for implementation. So I can, let's say, create a music system inside Wise. So we create some tracks, we create some logic to play these tracks, but inside the game engine, you need to do some trigger systems, you need to do some logic on how to implement the music for this battle, the phases of boss battles and stuff like that. And the thing is that it was very useful to have a person who can do it, so who can cut the sound, implement it into Wise, and also do the implementation in the engine. Because if you're just a sound designer who is actually talking to some programmer, there's always two problems. One is communication. So you first, everything you want to do, you need to explain, and then you have to wait for the programmer to do that. And when he is done with that, you need to see if he did what you wanted. And it almost never is from the first time. And if you're a programmer, the sound is last on your priority list. Like, that's in my experience, at least. I hope it's different in other companies. But for programmers who are doing all the sound, all the stuff for the game, like really important systems, for inventory, quest, multiplayer, matchmaking, stuff like that, if they need to do sound as well, it's like, oh my God, these sound people, like, and then they do a bad job or they don't have time to do it. And that was the case at Madhead Games, at least. And so it was really useful that we had someone like me who can open the engine and do the implementation. And then I found some talk about on the GDC from Mark Kilborn, who was like talking about technical sound design for the first time that I heard about that. And I was like, wait, that's me. I'm doing that stuff. I'm that guy. I'm not really just a sound designer. And I'm not a programmer. I'm somewhere in between because I have a mix of both like worlds in my background. And this is useful. Like, and people realize that it's useful to have these skills and to be able to have a vision of what you want to do and do it yourself inside the engine. And the company changed. We did another project after that. And it was my time in my life to maybe try something else, some new challenges. So I applied for a job at Ubisoft, and I got the opportunity. And so for like a year, I'm working at Ubisoft Paris on an unannounced project as a technical sound designer.
I think what might be interesting for many of us is, the actual process at Ubisoft. How, did you find your job? How was the interviews, etc.? So what in a big company like Ubisoft, what are people expecting when hiring sound designers or technical sound designers?
Yeah, so it's becoming more and more difficult for people to get into game audio. It seems so, at least. And I don't think I would ever get these opportunities if I was just a sound designer. Because first of all, sound design is a skill of recording, editing, and mixing sounds. So the result of your work are WAV files if you're just a sound designer. And for industry that is so evolving so quickly, and that's so competitive, for the games themselves, and for the job market as well, it's not enough anymore to just like be able to do good sounds, like, because you need to understand the process. I think I wouldn't come outside of Serbia, let's say Serbia ecosystem of gaming and game development, if I wasn't having this mixed set of skills. So when I had the interviews, my portfolio was mainly, I think, appreciated because of these technical skills. Like my sound design skills are, I don't know, okay to mediocre to okay to maybe fine. I'm fine because I'm also a little rusty now because I don't have so much, let's say, time to just do sound design, just do editing as I was able to do that before. Here there are much more processes and communication between the teams, and also like architecture of the project and the technology. So it's a really a big production, and there's a lot to learn and a lot to think about. So when they're hiring, when I had an interview with them, it was mostly about my technical skills, my technical background, and they really wanted to know what exactly I did as a gameplay programmer. And what does it mean that I finished a game? What kind of game? How many people were there involved? What were you learning, and what kind of scripting languages, and what was your responsibility? And did you like also was managing other people, or were you like designing things? And so they really got into details about what I learned and what I did as a gameplay programmer. And then they wanted to know how many years of school I had, what did I learn at school. So all the details, but with a really big focus on my technical skills, because game production is becoming and evolving and becoming more and more complicated for these, at least for AAA games. If you're aiming to AAA games, it's becoming really difficult to make these games, because there's a quality bar raising every year. We have new gen consoles, next gen consoles, we have new technologies, we are making bigger and bigger games. And then you really need to have someone who understands more than just his or her job. Like not just okay, this is my set of skills and I'm doing just like that. The wider you can look and the wider you can understand, the better chances for you are to get the job and get into the industry. And that was my fortune, because I had mixed background. Like I also like started first making electronic music. I wanted to be a DJ. I made some amateur movies. I finished film school as a sound designer, then worked as a gameplay programmer, and then as a sound designer, and then as a technical sound designer, blah, blah, blah. So I really cannot say like advice for people who just want to be sound designers. Maybe like this, you start with small, like you find some people who are making indie games, who are making attend game jams, make connections of people, and build your portfolio, but try to introduce other skills. Like really important is to know middleware as much as you can, like Fmod or Wise, and now Alias is also like evolving. Also, it's good to know at least one game engine basics, like navigation or source control systems as well, like SVN and Git. That is also important, because when you're making games, you're making software. That's the fact. So you need to be able to know how software is developed. And software is made out of bunch of files, text files, binary files, WAV files, whatever. And all these files are making one software. And it's really hard to, and a lot of people are doing it at the same time on the different parts of the world. So as a sound designer, if you understand that they are people around you as like programmers, technical artists, and other folks are going to appreciate that, because you will be able to talk their own language, because they're making software and you are making the software with them as well. And also it's important to be good at sound design. If you're a sound designer, that's really not something you should underestimate. So you need to save your ears and to improve that skills as well.
So how did it happen? You said you had the precursor to the LKC tools with the script that you did for Pro Tools. And
yes.
And then you learned Reaper. Did you start with you said you started at your prior company with the scripts that you did, the variator script, the navigator, the render blocks?
Stuff I created while I was at Madhead Games. And at one point, it was for our internal purposes. And at one point, I realized that this is something that could be useful for other people working in game audio. And then I talked to my company and I said, I want to get this out publicly. So what about making some kind of agreement? I know this was made just for the company and during my work time, but I think it would be useful. So do you want to do it as a company that Madhead Games is making these tools and publishing them, or do you want to give me a permission so I can do it on my own? And they didn't want to have anything with them as a company doing that. They were like, no, if we do it, then we need to maintain it, then we need to make updates, then we need to guarantee stuff, then people will contact us.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's not something we want to commit to, but if you want to do it and you feel it's like something that could be useful for you and for everyone else, then let's do that. So we made an agreement and I got the permission to release that as a specific independent toolset. And so most of the scripts I made are shared for free on GitHub, but those that I invested the most time in and that needed a lot of support. So the most complicated stuff I just gave for premium, and I thought that people who will need it will pay for it, and people who want to try it out can try it out for free. And so that was the idea, and it started like, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and it's still continuing, and I still have a lot of plans, but not a lot of time. So we'll see. Maybe I will be better in my time management in the future.
Is it working out for you? Because Reaper has seen this uptick. You know, as you said, you came into the Reaper realm by reading the book, then you got interested, and I have the feeling that Reaper was on a steady, incline. The sound designers are using it more.
It works because I get opportunities like this to meet new people, to talk to new people. I think it was a big part of me getting this job as well, because they saw my expertise in Reaper, and they need someone like that who is able to improve Reaper workflows, because most of the industry, as you're probably noticing, is switching to Reaper, and specifically because it's so customizable and you can mold it to be your solution for your own needs. Pro Tools is still like the greatest maybe tool for making movies and recording music, but that's up for discussion, which we can say for another time.
Uh-huh.
But Reaper is affordable and customizable, and every company has their own workflow, and they realized that they can utilize that customability and scripting language support to develop custom features. And then they need people who are able to think about that and do it for them. So I think in that sense, it's really working for me positively. I believe I'm doing something useful for myself and for the world. So I'm happy about it.
So for everybody who doesn't use Reaper, or for everybody who uses Reaper, but maybe is not yet has had a game design or sound design job. What is it that sound designers do that your LKC Tools helps with?
In short, it makes you quicker and more efficient, and then you're able to do navigation inside the project more quickly, and editing and rendering of files. As I said already, when you're making sounds for games, it's not one final mix or movie .mp4. You're making like a lot of assets for a lot of files, and if you want to have a dynamic audio soundscape, you need to have a lot of granularity, and that means basically a lot of small audio files. And then if you have a lot of small audio files, every of those files needs to have a name, which is useful for the game engine, but for the person who is going to use it as well, because it needs to make sense for the human and for the computer. And when you scale that up, so you need to make a lot of files, you need to make them quickly, and they need to have a flexible and strict naming system. If you have all these demands, it's really useful if you have some tools that can help you not think about all these problems, but to focus on the content, to focus on what you need to make, to be creative, and to do just your work. Because as a sound designer, you really want to design something, not just click and rename and I don't know, do these things that one day may be completely automated, you know. And so, in short, that's what my tools are all about. And they all came from my need to overcome some things that were annoying me during my work as a sound designer.
Can you show it to us?
Yeah, sure. So where do I start? So I use a lot of shortcuts, and I have a specific way of how to learn shortcuts. And I picked it up from some book about Pro Tools.
Okay.
So, for example, if you need to do, I don't know, this, show all takes in lanes, and you are used to do it like this with the menu, the next time you need to do it, you check the shortcut and don't do it this way, and then press the shortcut. So it's like punishing yourself for not using shortcut. So for every stuff that can be learned to do by hands without using just mouse and clicking on the buttons, but using the shortcuts on the keyboard, you go back, hit undo, and then do it again. It's really annoying process, and it really wants your mind wants to kill you. But if that's the way to actually start using these shortcuts. So you have a motivation to not do it by hand, because you will be punished by yourself if you do it by hand, by clicking. And there's one more, maybe more extreme technique, is to disable your mouse and to enable numpad as a mouse. There's a way to do that inside Windows. And you will become very limited with mouse movements and mouse strokes, because it will be slow and it will be terrible for you. And then you will find every way to use shortcuts instead of numpad as a mouse. So I recommend trying that for like a couple of days or for a week. And then after that, when you bring the mouse, you will have all your shortcuts under your hands, like on your muscle memory. And I'm focusing on this so much because I believe that it is important. It's like playing an instrument, you know, like you play the guitar and you practice, and you practice in slow, then medium, then fast. And then when you're actually good with it, you become comfortable, and then you're able to express yourself more. So I'm really like have an opinion of using DAW as your instrument. Yeah, we have people who are not familiar with Reaper, so this is not the default Reaper look. I have built this main toolbar for myself. I have changed this default toolbar. I have this custom mixer toolbar here, and I also slightly tweaked this default theme. Theming of Reaper is also another topic that can be a big rabbit hole for people, but you can change themes and make it look different. And you have also, like, this is Ableton. You have also like copies of Cubase, Logic, Nuendo, stuff like that, whatever you prefer. There is also Pro Tools or these custom themes. This one is from the version 5. But I'm trying to stick with this default 6, a bit customized, because I believe they introduced some good, how do you say that, UI language things that differentiate the buttons and menu options, and once you get used to it, it's really useful. So I customized this here. The first part is switching screen sets. So I have this default screen set, then I have this one for music, which is a bit different when you have some tracks and MIDI editor, because I'm also like making music when I have time. So I have a custom layout to make music in Reaper. This one is different because the mixer is shorter. There's not so much room for this. I have this one for Wise. I have this one which is like when I want to just focus on the content. So I hide everything. I just look the sounds and I edit stuff, whatever I have, if I have something to be edited. This one is for video editing, similar to Adobe Premiere, and this one is also for video editing where I have video over here. This is a Content Navigator, which is my script for navigation through the projects, and like a bunch of options and preferences for a way that you edit sounds in Reaper, regions, tracks. If you like want to get into Reaper and you think scripting is cool and you want to learn scripts, to how to make your own scripts, that's very useful and very cool. But first, always try to see if the script already exists, because there's like a big chance that people already did these things. So just imagine how many of the available scripts and custom effects and workflows there are that people are making and sharing for free. Then you can try to find if you have something that you can pay for that people made, and then if you don't want to pay it or it's not good for you, then you can start thinking about making your own script, because there's no reason for you to develop something yourself if it already exists, unless you want to learn how to make scripts because it's fun and you want to understand the process more. But there is a lot of these repositories that you can add here, and you can play around and try to find some stuff that people created. This is a cool script that I also recommend. It's for renaming stuff. You select tracks, you enter prefix, I don't know this sound, SFX. You enter the number. So the number is going to be suffix starting from 1, and then you commit, and then you get the names. And then you're like, oh, I don't like this. I want to replace SFX with sound. And then you commit. And then, so this is really useful script for track and item manipulation for the names. And I definitely can recommend it. And if you want to clear, where's the clear? Here it is. So these kind of things. And one stuff that you need to get used to with Reaper is that you will have to spend some time thinking about new ways and trying to implement them in your mind. So when you want to do something, you don't go your old way, because old ways are quicker now, but long term, you're losing time and you're losing efficiency and you're losing creativity. And so for example, when you're editing sounds, when you're editing sound effects, it's important to have your own editing workflow. So let's just bring some sound effects here. And because I was a Pro Tools user, I was really familiar with the way you edit sounds in Pro Tools, and it's using keyboard. So with A you cut, with S you cut, with D you fade, with G you fade, with B you split. And but in Pro Tools you have to click first with the editor, edit cursor, and then cut, and then you click here and then cut, and then you click here and then cut. So I removed that and created my own custom scripts that are just using the mouse, and then you have ability to edit sounds really quickly and to do stuff that you want without the need of clicking all the time. And if you sometimes want to have the clicking, for example, you want to make edits on the grid, so you can then enable this mode to disable the cursor, and then you can cut where the edit cursor is. And for example, use this, or let's say like this, or this for fades. But if for the most time I don't use that, I just use like quick cuts, quick editing, and I like to do these things quickly. So for example, if I want to quickly pan this sound effect, I have a menu. This is my like quick toolbar that I created for the things that I'm usually using. So for example, if I want to pan, I open the pan envelope and I pan this to the left. I want this one to the right, or this one I want to be mono. Now it's mono file. And if when I stretch it, so now you won't hear it, but now it's stretched without the pitch, without changing the pitch. But if I want to change the pitch, I open this and click this option, and now it's pitched down. So this one is for reversing. This one?
Yeah. I know you make your own ones, but how do you get it to appear just a really small one like that?
So you have a lot of these custom toolbars that you can customize. And here it is. It's the one, I think, floating toolbar. Yeah. So this is the one that is appearing. But inside the... No, it's not this one. It's this one. Inside SWS, so I have extensions that I use, Repack and SWS. SWS extensions has the option called floating toolbars. Where is it? Contextual toolbars. This is it. So you can research this. There are videos and documents, but there is a way to create presets for these toolbars to appear according to context. So where depending on where you show them. So for example, if I'm in the range view, when I press F, this will appear. If I'm here, it will show the colors and stuff like that. And there is like
that's amazing
for coloring.
Wow. Yeah, it is. It's gonna take me a lot of time, man.
Very nice.
That's what that's what you have to love about Reaper, right? If you ask 20 people about how they use Reaper, everybody is different. Everybody has their little tweaks, and your mind is blown with how they combine all the different tools to a bigger thing. So we could have a session where we just invite people that show their Reaper.
Yeah, you're giving me loads of homework here.
Every day, like there's always something new to learn. And so this is an exception, but I don't like having stuff being gray. So I tend to color stuff just to have my mind be more like in the mood.
A more friendly place. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So you can color by coloring the items or coloring tracks. So you can create, there are like tools to do it like this. So let's say, for example, all colors randomly, or you can use these scripts that are, that you can define these color schemes or do gradients, or use this other script that is also available. And there are a lot of like coloring scripts. You can dig really deep to do this stuff, or you just use random stuff. But the important thing is to have the way to quickly edit, but there is also important way to quickly navigate. So I have, as a ex-Pro Tools user, I have R and T for zooming in and zooming out. But I also have Shift and Scroll for zooming quickly in and out of where the time cursor is. Then I have like zooming out this way, zooming in, stretching this way, and using the hand to navigate like this. What is else there? There is like zooming selected items to maximize them. Let's say like this. It can be useful to do these quick edits on their own. And these with this, you see, they're now soloed, and they don't have to be next to each other. I can pick these two, and they're now together, and I'm listening them in context, or I can just view them and they're not soloed. I listen everything that I have, and then I open, I don't know, the pitch envelope, and then draw some stuff, and then go back. And yeah, so it's important to become fluent with your environment and to have ways to do these edits quickly, and to be a few clicks away from what you want to do. And there is this also. I'm not using this too much, but I'm trying to introduce a habit of using quick adder. I'm still used to having this custom default Reaper FX Explorer, but this tool is also useful very much, and the UI is really cool, so I recommend it. It's called Quick Adder.
I actually have a quick question. Just like regarding like custom edited Reaper more. I guess it's just been a while since I've like used like Pro Tools, but now like I strictly use Reaper. Is there like anything you recommend for making custom shortcuts? Like any kind of like recommended, I guess, shortcut like layout, or is this kind of like something that you just kind of adapted to and figured out your own kind of flow with it?
Well, I started from Pro Tools. Like I started using default Reaper, and I didn't like the default settings. So that's really important to know that a lot of things in Reaper by default are terrible. Like from my perspective, and from someone coming from Pro Tools and coming to Reaper, I was like, oof, I don't like the way I move around this software. So I want to, and I changed everything. Like the first day when I figured out that I can do that, I changed every setting. So I want this to have the scroll button to do this. I want when I scroll to go to the tracks. I don't want to zoom. I want to have the ability to zoom out, to zoom in, to, I don't know, jump from one place to another, from wherever I am. And I want to edit like in Pro Tools, but even better now, because I can also untrim, like with some. I don't have to just trim. I can also untrim stuff. And with this razor editing, there is now more possibilities, like to stretch things and to do custom edits even more efficiently. I want to have the ability to reverse stuff. I want to normalize stuff. I want to glue stuff together. It's a gradual process. It's not something like, okay, I'm done with it now. But every time I have a small problem, here's the how do you say, the secret. The secret is whenever you need to get work done, you actually customize Reaper.
that makes sense. Okay.
Because you will always have to do some work, and you will never have time to customize Reaper, to just like, today I will sit and just customize Reaper. No, for me it never happened. So whenever I was in the middle of the work and I found myself not really being able to do something the way I wanted, I then stopped and sacrificed my current project I was working on, and I sacrificed these 5 or 10 minutes to do this, to install custom script or set custom shortcut, and then I improved my workflow forever from that moment on. And you need to be able to sacrifice the work that you need to do in order to customize your Reaper. And in a couple of years, you will have your Reaper mostly set up, so you can always do your work efficiently. There is a danger there that you can get into the rabbit hole and never stop customizing. So you need to balance between that and actually finishing some job. But I was able to do that, or no one noticed that I wasn't able to do that. So, yeah, I don't know if that's answering the question.
No, that answered the question. Thank you. I actually did have one quick question. I know we aren't going to get into themes or anything, but what is the current theme that you're using right now on Reaper?
It's default LKC.
Okay, gotcha.
I changed this transport bar. I changed how folders look.
Yeah,
I don't like this. This is some ugly for me. To me, I don't.
Yeah.
So I changed it to look like this, and I copied this from Hydra team, and I changed how buttons look to actually be buttons, because with the default theme they're not highlighted unless you hover over them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a couple of things like that, like colors and stuff like that everyone can use, or change some small icons. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, I had a quick question, just coming from Pro Tools. Is there any way of doing something similar to Audio Suite? Because I've been doing the clip effects, which is great, but I kind of miss being able to preview quickly and render from Audio Suite. I don't know, is there any solution?
There is a script by a guy called Adam T. Croft, and you can write that down. And he created something called Instant Take Suite, something like that. I don't know if it's still supported, but he tried to do exactly that. Like he's also like a technical sound designer and specialized in Reaper and in WAPI or Wise, and he did this to try to emulate Audio Suite from Pro Tools. And I tried it back a couple of years ago, and if I remember, what I didn't like, it was that it glued the whole file. So if you introduce ambience of 10 minutes and you do some EQ on it, it will process the whole 10-minute file. And that's what I didn't like about it. But it had that ability of stacking up a couple of effects and then consolidating them. I guess that's what you mean by Audio Suite. I'm not sure. What?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I mean. Being able to actually render them down instantly was very useful because it makes you commit to things sometimes, whereas the effects clip sometimes is not a bit non-committal, which is also really useful.
Yeah, so you can always, the simplest way is to, so you want to put some reverb and you want to commit to this, so you can then glue this bias. So this is like glued.
Yeah.
In this time selection. So this is one way. So I glued this, and then you can add, I don't know, EQ, and then you again glue this, and so there's no way of going back unless you undo stuff. So you can always glue if that's what you want. I don't know.
Well, I think it's basically that, but I'd love to be able to keep my plugin open, like in Pro Tools, so I can keep a set of effects open and just quickly render, if you know what I mean. Like I would have like 10 windows open and then just bang through the ones I want.
I think you should try that Instant Take Suite. It was like $15 or something like that, $15-$20 to buy it, and there is a demo, so you can see what it looks like if you want to keep exactly the same workflow.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks so much.
No problem. If there are any questions,
render blocks. Talk render blocks.
Yeah, sure. Why not? I'm skipping that because I'm supposing that people already know, but maybe it's good to actually say something about that.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to disappear in a few minutes, but in the Audio Hangouts text channel, where just above the voice channel we're in now, I posted names of all the scripts and things that have been mentioned so far. So I'm going to be coming back to it and doing some homework. But in case I disappear in a minute, yeah, thank you, Nikola. That was really, really interesting.
Sorry if I'm talking too much and not really showing
Absolutely
stuff.
not.
This
is great.
like...
I'm really...
Okay, so for render blocks, the idea is to be able to quickly do a lot of sounds and export them quickly. So if you want to, let's say, this is your sound for whatever reason you want these to be exported the way they're grouped. You can then mark them and then pack them together and then name them with, I don't know, SFX sound. And they're all named. And you see they're like, those are render blocks. This is the basics of render blocks. This is a block of sounds that are going to be one audio file. And you can listen to them together, but when you export them, they will be separate sound files. And then when you render them, they should render without having a headache of setting up region render matrix or stuff like that. So they're all now re-imported as in a temporary project as custom sound files. And also if you want to specify some differences, so for example, we want this to be mono files, and let's see if this works. So now they're white because they're exported, so you know that you already exported them, but we can go back and let's see if it will work. Hopefully it will. Yeah, so we have these two layers that are mono and all these are stereo. So with one rendering queue process, we defined the files that we want to be optimized. If we're making mobile games, we don't want to have stereo files, for example. These are stereo. And you can define things like this, or you want for these two to have a custom tail of 2000 milliseconds. And when you render, let's, for example, render 4 of these, and we need to overwrite them. Okay. This is because I didn't close the temporary project. So that's a rookie mistake. I don't want to do this. When you render them, you see that these two have a tail. So that's one of the features of render blocks. You can define custom tails. And what is cool about that is that if you actually have some reverb over here, let's do something really obvious visually. Again, massive. We are Stardust, why not? So if we render these files, you can see that they have reverb, but it's cut. So it's completely, because we have defined 2 seconds of tail and then cut. And most of the time you don't want to have that. So I defined a way to actually, let's do it like 50% so we can have also a dry signal. There is a way to automatically fade it with ftail property. And then if we do it again, you see how we have fade out on these. So if you are doing some magic stuff with reverbs on, or I don't know, some sound impacts that have reverb, and you want to render them with fade but with tail, you can use this feature to do this. And the other component is automatic naming. So if we delete all these options and do hierarchy like this, for example, let's pick these into this folder, and yeah, this should be mostly fine. So we rename this into, I don't know, footsteps, and rename this one into crouch. And you see that we have SFX, footsteps, crouch. And then if we use a feature called auto-naming, we should have names that are having this hierarchy, SFX footsteps, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is one folder, this is another folder. And if we zoom in, we can see here we have SFX crouch, and we have here SFX footsteps. But it doesn't end here. We can also do regions. So if we have a region here called light, and we have a region here called heavy, we should get the names that have this. Footsteps light, crouch light, and here we have footsteps heavy, crouch heavy. So you create the structure of your project, you predefine a template, you name regions, you name tracks, and then you simply edit. When you're done, you pack them, you name them, and then you export them with the predefined options. So like in a couple of seconds, I have like 20 files that have different names and are ready to be implemented in the game. Or the next step is you make a game, recognize the sounds that are different. If you're not using Wise, you have like a system to recognize if it's a light, you play it light. If it's crouch, heavy, you play it when it's heavy and stuff like that. So you create a system that is dependent on names of files. So you can do that, you know. And if you have a big project, so yeah, maybe I should stop actually here first. So if there's anything.
It's not a question, but I mean, I think several software packages like Nuendo have come into this realm where they also have abilities to export and name things based on naming conventions. Reaper had that as well. But of course, what's special here is that you can have these different configurations. And this is what you said about really saving time. If you wanted to export stereo files, mono files, fades on longer tails, or have tails, you can do that, but you have to do it one by one. You have to click the tail button and then specify 2 seconds. And then for this, export, and then click the everything to mono file. And here you have a configuration that you can do once. And then when you change the limiter or you want to have a special effect on your master, you go back, you render everything, and you have the configurations without you going back, rendering one by one, etc. So this is a huge time saver for projects.
Yeah, that's the whole idea. Like,
yes,
we had to do a lot of files with a lot of different settings, and we had to do them quickly. So with this, we had the opportunity to just do it at once. And I was like, okay, I'm sure someone else will have use of this. So yeah, that's how it came about.
What we debated at some point is how many sound effects do you pack in one project?
Okay, sure.
Because sometimes I see people that do one project per sound effect. Some try to put it all in one project, which gets then huge and 50,000 folders and unwieldy. So where's your sweet spot?
Sweet spot, I don't know. I have no idea. For me, it's too much. For one sound per project is too much. That would be difficult for me. I don't know. But also, this is also crazy. Like this is just a demonstration, and it's this is the idea of how why I created this content navigator. So if you have, let's demonstrate this. This is what you can do. This in Reaper, like having 1,000 tracks in one project and millions of sounds. So this is possible, but it's difficult to navigate. But if you want to do it, you can do it, and you can do it with Content Navigator. You can jump between these folders, and let's listen this level 1, let's listen level 2, let's listen level 3, let's listen them all together. No, they're not together, but let's hear them all together. But if they are, maybe you want to listen them like this. I don't know. So, or search for, I don't know, spells. Why doesn't it work? It never works when you want to demonstrate something. Oh, yeah, maybe it's a bug I need to investigate. Let's try grass. Yeah, grass works, but spells doesn't work. Ah, now it works. Okay. Here are the spells. So you can open and close folders here as well. And yeah, I don't know. If you want to know more about this tool, you can search and see the demonstration videos on the YouTube channel. But the idea is to have something that is related to how things are organized, maybe in Wise, and then you can jump to these containers and then open them and then see what have you done. And so this way you can put a lot of stuff in one project. And I guess you can go too much if you put so many plugins that your project is crashing. Then you should probably stop and separate your project to a couple of different things. But I wouldn't go one sound per project. For me, it would be inefficient, because just the way I'm working on games and which type of games, you usually have to have at least a couple of sounds in one project or one family of sounds. For example, all this character Foley sounds, or this character, I don't know, voices, or this character, or this weapon, or this vehicle. You know, like usually the projects for me are like assets in game. Like, is it a character? Is it a weapon? Is it some kind of environment, section of a level, or stuff like that? So and then I put all these things in one project. So not too much and not too little.
I think Reaper helps also with that you can have these project tabs. This is something other software don't handle well. So if you switch projects, the DAW unloads everything, loads the other projects, so you lose a lot of time. This is not what's happening with Reaper.
I agree completely. And what you can also do with render blocks is that you can change the rendering mode. So I'm gonna just quickly try to demonstrate this. You can change the rendering mode to be in queue. So you create these render blocks in all these projects, and then instead of rendering them here, you enter them into a queue. Close. This one is named the same. Okay, never mind. And this will be probably because I didn't name them. Okay, but this is like 3 projects at the same time, and then we render them all at once with render blocks, but using the multiple projects at once. So if you're doing something like that, it's also possible to use render queue with render blocks, or with default Reaper region matrix, or whatever. But there is a lot. Like you see that this is a discussion that can end like never. So I would stop here personally.
Mm-hmm. That is a perfect spot. So does anybody want to know something?
The question is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was wondering which scripting languages you use to actually develop your own like plugins and such for Reaper.
Lua. I'm using just Lua for Reaper, and yeah, I think that's the best way to do it.
Cool. Also, one more question: what languages would you recommend for learning? I know you mentioned that it's kind of a good thing to be like a sound designer and someone that understands programming. So where would you start?
C#, because if you're learning Unity, it's good to learn C#. So that's very, very cool. If you're learning Unreal Engine, it's cool to learn Blueprint scripting system, visual scripting. And besides these that are engine related, you can also learn Lua for Reaper, and Python is also really useful. But it's always good to, if you're doing with some engine stuff, you learn the language of that engine. And C# is really useful, and Python as well. And for Reaper, Lua. So, and when you learn one of these, it's really not so difficult to switch and learn the others, because the principles are the same. It's the syntax and some of the ideas that are a bit different, but the core is always the same.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
I've got a quick question going back to the sharing issue that you were talking about. So in let's say film and television post environments, dealing with sharing, let's say Pro Tools sessions, there are a lot of issues with, let's say, plugins and the way that people set up their sessions that need to be compatible across different studios and people who have access to the sessions. And Reaper is so incredibly customizable. I would almost think that that's a recipe for chaos when it comes to sharing. So how do you find that these projects translate when somebody else opens them up in a different part of the company, that maybe they don't have the same kind of tools, that they don't have this extension installed? What happens, in that scenario?
So there are two aspects of this issue. And one is that there is a chaos in Reaper configuration between people. So that is the trade-off. When you start using Reaper as an industry, you cannot sit at someone's computer and just open the program and work in their configuration, because they configure it completely differently. So what we actually do is, and that's one of my responsibilities here, to try to figure out to create a system so anyone can sync the software that they have whenever they come to another computer. So it becomes really individualistic. You cannot use someone else's setup or shortcuts, and then we push that even further. So everyone has their own profile, like you're logging into your Facebook profile or Instagram profile, social network. That is your way of connecting with the world and your connections and your feed. And so we then push this idea. So we have a cloud where all Reaper configurations are sitting, and then wherever you go, you download your settings and use them on that computer, whether you're working from home or whether you're at the office. But the other aspect of it, and that can be solved. The other aspect is plugin stuff, and that's completely unrelated to how things are set up. And that is simply depending on how it's the same for every DAW. It's a problem that people need to have plugins, VSTs installed on the same on every computer that they're using, and you can solve that only by introducing standards and pushing at least project wise. In this project, we are using these plugins. We're using, FabFilter. We're using Sound Toys, and that's it. We're not using anything else. So that allows us to share projects. And if someone installs, free isotope trash to do their distortion because it's the best distortion, no, don't do that, because maybe it is the best distortion, but then you're creating a problem for everyone else who needs to open that project later. So standardization of VSTs, but on the company level, I think it's impossible. There is a chaos there. And so you stick it with project-wide standard. And for the configurations, you try to have a sync system so everyone can use their own. It really becomes your personal experience.
Great, thanks so much.
No problem.
Just to pick up on Bill's point there, is there any way you could do something like export selected tracks as session data? So if you had a bunch of different tracks selected, it would export the timeline horizontally, say if you had no plugins on anything. And then you get a file as a Pro Tools session, and then you can import that in another Pro Tools session. You can import the tracks and select which tracks to do it. That's normally the way we do it in post.
So stems
for me. Like stems, but not not rendering out the sound separately. It's like it sort of takes all the information into a file, and I can choose to import level 2 or level 1 there, or that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I understand. But you want to do it between other DAWs, between Reaper and Pro Tools.
Yeah, I'd love if there was some method of integrating the two, because I always feel like it's going to be very hard for post-production to switch completely to Reaper because of the integration with Avid in terms of video editing software. Yeah, so it would be amazing if someone can solve this. But
the moment you introduce plugins, I think it becomes chaotic.
Yeah, unless there was some way of automatically rendering them down. But even without, say, if you were working in a session without any plugins active, just purely editing, and that's kind of what the audio suite was useful in some sense, because you render down as you go.
Yeah.
So
there is a tool called Vordio. Pro Tools uses OMF and AAF for video editing when you want to get some stuff from video editors. But Vordio is so because Reaper does not have native support for that format for importing these things. There is a guy who is specialized in creating importer of XML files from Adobe Edition, Adobe Premiere into Reaper, and there's a lot of other formats that he added support for. So it's possible that there is a way to export Reaper project and maybe convert it into a Pro Tools project. And if Vordio cannot do that, then there is a translator, and that one can definitely do that to a certain degree. So it's a small obscure project that looks like it's unsupported, but it's really a live tool that you can contact developers if you have some issues, and you can buy a software license that will allow you to even import OMF into Reaper. So it's like cross conversion of all DAWs possible to all DAWs possible. Like, but I guess it's not perfect. There must be some issues with that. But I'm not really experienced with testing that and using it because I don't have a need for that.
I used a translator from time to time, and you just have to find the right workflow because there's so many settings and so many things that Reaper does differently than Pro Tools, and Pro Tools does differently, so it doesn't always translate between those things very well. You really have to find out for your specific workflow if it works. I've seen that John Tidy has interviewed somebody from India who does feature like Hollywood style films, and he showed a little bit of his workflow, and he really liked Reaper as well to doing sound design and the sounds, but their workflow really is that they like Reaper for the flexibility, and they render out then the sounds, and the re-recording mixer who does put everything together still works in Pro Tools with the whole movie systems, etc., and then just takes the rendered files and puts them back into the timeline. So this is how they solved it.
I think I don't remember the name of the guy, but I can check because he wanted some custom scripts.
Ah, nice.
Vijay Ratiman, that's the name of the guy. He is working closely with Pro Sound Effects, I think, and with some Hollywood productions where they are trying to introduce Reaper for some aspects of exactly as Chris described. But yeah, I don't even think that Reaper will replace Pro Tools in movie in near future, or maybe ever.
Yeah, I've noticed some of the mixers here using it now. So like, there's definitely a want to be able to do a lot of the things Reaper can do, but I think it is just this integration problem at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, if nobody else has any questions, then I would say, Nikola, thank you very, very much. I mean, my mind is blown. So much things to get back to in the head. The workflow you showed, the way you talked about your career. I think that was very valuable to a lot of us.
Well, I'm glad if I could be helpful.
No, tremendously. And now you know the server, we have these hangouts every Friday. So if you want to come along, grab a beer, just hang out with us. And we talk about different things, audio production or career or anything. It's always a lot of fun. So you're always welcome here. Thank you very, very much for showing this to us.
No problem.
And then,
Yes,
yeah.
super good. Thank you.
Thank you. Really, really cool.
Thank you a lot. It was really nice.
Thank you for having me here, and sorry if I was like all around the place. This was really spontaneous, and I tried to be detailed as much as I can. So if it's a bit confusing, sorry.
I think that's what actually makes the charm of it, because we're all trying to get into the audio professional world, or are already in the audio professional world, and then just seeing how other people work inspires new behavior. So I'm going to try your shortcut technique.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, thanks. Cool. So for everybody else, we can still hang out here. The channel is open. Feel free. And then otherwise, have a very nice weekend. And thank you very much.
Guys, and nice to meet you, and see you around.
Yeah.
Yes, you.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Chris, for setting that up. That was awesome.
Yeah.
It really was. Damn.
I mean, now that I see that it worked so well, it wasn't that hard. I mean, he's such an approachable guy.
I'm definitely going to use Reaper more now.
Amazing. I only just found out about Variator the other day and I just saw the name. But yeah, amazing stuff, amazing tools.
Yeah, there was a lot to take in. Just looking
Yeah.
this config was like so modular. I'm just like, oh yeah, this is my video editing. This is my I like to change the colors. Here's a color scheme. Here's my. It's like
so good.
Really.
I'm gonna spend so much time customizing my contextual toolbar. Like it seems so good.
Just trying to get it to work. Dude.
Yeah, same. I was on it, trying to make it work, but it seems a bit complex to me.
Oh, I forgot to ask him about those swatches. Sorry to cut you off. Might DM him or something.
Swatches?
Yeah,
Where do you
have
even
3 or
start
4
with it?
color plugins.
Reaper seems kind of scary. It's kind of like Wise when you first get into it.
Yeah, definitely is.
And this is what I don't get about the Reaper team, that they still have the same default configuration that everybody says is terrible. Why?
Make it more fancy.
Just like watching all the Reaper stuff coming from a long time of using Pro Tools, I'm like, you think you're doing things fast. You think you've like tapped out your speed on Pro Tools, but it's like there's so many more opportunities. I guess like in terms of a specialized thing like designing, but even not, even just basic editing stuff, the opportunity to go faster is there with Reaper, it seems like.
Just on the color swatches thing, I think he had, was it ReaNoir? Was one of them was?
I just got it. And
It's like he had a different buy-in for what he felt like using that day. It seems really just like all over the place.
Oh yeah, I think he had one specifically for the TCP and one for the items and one for the, I don't know, for the region or something like that. But yeah, he had a bunch of...
Yeah, so I have everything recorded so you can go frame by frame because it went fast.
Nice.
Oh, that's 5 plugins in 3 frames. That's amazing.
No, I was just gonna say the automatic rendering with the tail, so that you don't need to adjust it, for every file, that you just set it to fade in. Oh, I'm gonna use that. I think he has a new customer for sure.
Wait, which thing was that? Was that the thing?
Render block.
Render
You
blocks,
in the render blocks where you can set the fade. What's it called? I made a note. F-tail.
F-tail.
Yeah.
F-tail? Sorry to cut you off again.
And you render it with a tail from your effects.
So it seems that you add a text note, probably I don't know what he exactly uses, but the text note to enter the text, and the text becomes the commands how Reaper should export it, and he evaluates everyone, and then switches the settings, and then renders the file out, and then reads the next block, reads the configuration, changes how it should be rendered out, mono, stereo, with tail, without tail. And if you normally use a tail, either you put the file so long or the tail so long that the tail has the room to go away, or you render it somewhere and then you add the fade and then you render it again. It's all about the speed that he mentioned. I mean, that is really a very good function if you're using reverb a lot.
I was going to ask where that documentation was. Like, I'm assuming it comes with the render block file. It's like all of those different the text commands, or.
Can your brain even go that fast? Or has it just gone down to muscle memory at that point?
It's all muscle memory. That's 5 years of setting configs up while you're hanging out on a Zoom call. That is.
I think at this point, Reaper becomes like an instrument that people play for years and years every day. If you do that, then you have the capacity to hold everything in your brain, and this is that shortcut, this is that shortcut, now I do this, now I do this. But if you reuse Reaper from time to time, then it really is hard keeping everything in your head. And this is probably also where Pro Tools and Reaper have the exact opposite use case, because Pro Tools is super standardized so that one editor can go from facility to facility and have all his shortcuts are the same, all the track layouts are standardized more or less. So you have a very standardized environment, and Reaper's the exact opposite, right? Where everybody configures Reaper so that it works for them, and then they have to synchronize their config files.
Yeah, that was cool to hear him talk about that. Having to build up a config.
Yeah, that was a very cool hack. But Reaper makes it very easy, right? You can go to this resources folder, you zip everything up, or you tell Reaper which configs to zip up, and then you can take it with you wherever you go. So that's quite
that's
clever.
really cool.
And it's tiny too. I mean, the program itself is 10 megs?
Yeah, it's crazy how tiny it is.
Well, it doesn't come with all the sample libraries, right? Cubase, if you pay $600 for Cubase, you want to get some content with it, so you get all the sample libraries, all the orchestra stuff, all the synthesizer samples.
Yeah, but even then, I'm sure the program is way bigger.
It's like 20 gigs.
20 gigs?
I think Cubase is 20, 21 gigs. Just
without the plugins and the sound libraries.
You get let me just look at the Steinberg download assistant thing.
Okay.
Big Cubase. I could be wrong. Maybe it's 20 gigs with some stuff. Check it out.
I would guess with some stuff. Yeah.
Cubase Pro is 20 gigs. Elements is 14. Okay. What do they put in it?
Samples.
Oh my lord.
Well, samples and plugin UI, right? Because this is all graphics and it takes up a lot of space.
Yeah, Reaper is so ugly in the UI. It's pretty much nothing in the installation.
Disgusting.
Okay, Cubase Pro is 603 megabytes by itself.
Okay.
And then it's the extra stuff that takes up a whole bunch of space.
Oh yeah, Ableton Live is 3 gigabytes without the... Okay, so that's not too big.
Well, Reaper is bigger unpacked. If you download it, it's like 30 megs, but if you unpack it, it is 142 for me.
Okay, tiny.
Yeah, that's my size, but I have every script on Repack installed, so it's still so tiny.
Yeah, it's still very tiny.
Cool, so this is the moment where I stop the recording and then fumble something, lose the audio, the program crashes or something.